I do want to talk a little bit about the Pantheon comment, essentially it being that I don't subscribe to the notion of pantheons, because historically, whenever there was a cultural, social, political, religious exchange between different cultures and peoples, you know, rituals and gods and various things would intersect as well, would overlap, would be exchanged. So we see a great example of this in the worship of Isis, who originally was worshipped by the ancient Egyptians. There's evidence of her worship in ancient Britain. Additionally, you have the Romans, who famously incorporated the Gaulish goddess Epona into their state worship. So there's a ton of syncretism between religious practices, beliefs, and deities. And so the concept of hard pantheons being like these boundaries between gods is a little bit, it's modern. It's a modern idea, and not at all historical, based on evidence that we found. In fact, one of my favorite examples of syncretism in ancient polytheistic belief and practice is there is a inscription that they found where a German, ancient, like Germanic person, a man, gave votive, made this votive inscription to a Gaulish deity in the Roman style. So it's super cool, and we're finding new stuff all the time, like Chinese traders in ancient Britain, ancient Roman Britain, and just imagining that kind of syncretism is mind-blowing and amazing and so cool. So I see no reason why we modern polytheists have to have those hard boundaries between our deities as well. The only thing I will say is that the reason I keep my Anubis worship separate from my heathen practice is because historically there really wasn't exchange between the Goths, the ancient Goths, and the ancient Egyptians. There, as far as I'm aware, there was no evidence of overlap, especially in the early medieval period. So that's why I keep them separate, but also I feel like the purpose of ritual in a Kemetic context and the purpose of ritual in a heathen context are too different to be reconcilable. So for me, it works to have those separate. And if you want to have a separate shrine and separate rituals for various deities or groups of deities, pantheons, that's fine. But I feel like syncretism is something that is also equally valid and totally doable, provided that you respect the context and original context and culture of those gods. For example, I'm a Gothic heathen, and we know from history that the ancient Goths were a polyethnic society, essentially. Didn't matter what your blood was or your origin or where you were from, as long as you ascribed to what it meant to be a Goth, you were one. And all it really boiled down to was loyalty to a Gothic king and being a badass warrior. So the ancient Goths are a great example of syncretism in the ancient world, in the early medieval world. So there's a bit of Greek in my practice, a bit of Roman, a bit of Gaulish, a bit of Sarmatian, Slavic, Baltic, and of course Germanic. So instead of having all those separate parts be separate and disparate, my practice, I've been able to blend them all together into a recognizably heathen structure, framework, tradition, but still having those origins in Greece, Rome, etc. Anyway, all that is to say that pantheons are a modern concept, and I just don't really use them. I don't think it's helpful. It can be helpful in certain circumstances when you're explaining to people, like the various different cultures and their deities, but in terms of a living tradition that continues to evolve every day as we practice, then I don't think they're helpful at all.